Hey, this is John from whatifi, and in this temporary video, we're going to cover some of our more advanced events and modifiers, which are a specialty event. Just to be kind of clear, this is a temporary video. We're in the process of updating our UI, and some things may have already changed by the time you watch this video. As a recap, we built a model here previously where we had 4 different income events and 2 expenses. We've locked one of these event threads, so we're now calculating just a single thread. You'll notice here we had to create 4 different events with 4 different sets of values to have 4 different outcomes for income. And while this works, it can be quite complicated and cluttered to be able to do this. What our current algorithms do is they run through every single thread every single day and calculate all of this ledger data. They look at every single event to try to see when the start date and the end date is and whether it should be calculating or not on that given day. What we're going to do here is we're going to add in a decision event, and I'm going to show you a modified version where we're modifying an upstream event only in one version of that scenario. I'm going to start by putting in a decision event here so we can add that to the canvas. And then I'm also going to put in a null event. A null event literally does nothing. It just kind of creates a pass-through version of the model here where no changes are happening. And then we're going to add in a modifier here in one of our scenarios. So let's call this modifier 1. And what I want to do in this event is I want to look upstream for a type of event. We have income and expenses. So I want to be able to target income, and specifically I'm targeting income number 1 here. This was the name that we had of that particular event. I have the ability to affect all of the records that are in that thread, or I can pick a specific one like income stream number 1, which I believe was our Vancouver revenue, and I can target different properties. I can target the value or a start date or an end date. In this scenario, let's pick the income value, which is $30,000, and we have different types of modifiers. I can add to the value, I can change the value, or I can multiply the value. Let's select multiply, and I'm going to make this 1.5, which means every single month I'm taking that $30,000 and I'm multiplying it by 1.5. But we even give you the ability to be even more targeted. Maybe we don't want this calculation to take effect right off the bat. We want to wait until a date in the future, like January 1st of 2025. So now when I say fill and add, it's adding in that modifier here. I'm going to recalculate our model. And you'll see that we now have 2 different scenarios. One in which the modifier is being applied and one in which it is not. Let's open up our ledger data here and let's look at our income and specifically our Vancouver revenue. Okay. And now if I bring this up and I look at my threads, I'm now seeing 2 different calculations. One where it is the $30,000 in this particular thread, the pass-through thread, and one where we are, effective the date that we mentioned in the model there, adding a 1.5 multiplier into the future there. So this allows us to create these modifiers to change upstream values without having to have so many copy-paste duplications. And keep in mind, these modifiers are stackable. So inside of this, I've done one modification where I'm modifying the $30,000. We could, in theory, duplicate this, and we could also look at a modifier where we are changing other values inside of that at the same time too. We can do, for example, an add to value where I want to add in $50,000 or $5,000. Maybe I want to have a different custom effect period here, so I'm going to push this off by a couple more months there. And when I'm updating this now and I recalculate, we should be able to sort of see that when we have our 2 threads and when I bring up our Vancouver revenue here, that we have those are now stacking. So there's the 1.5, and then there's the additional revenue added on top of that as well. So now let's talk about some of our other events that are available to us, right? So I'm going to go up to our null thread here and just recap the general groupings. we have 38 events that are live that are currently being ported over to our new build here. You are only seeing a smaller list of those currently, and hopefully by the time you're looking at this, you will see that there are more events that are available. We have our basic events like debit, credit, incomes, expenses, these sort of things. We have our customer module where we're going to be able to do software as a service type scenarios here. We have our capacity planning module where you can look at projects, bids, awards, resources that are required in capacity. And we have our utility events where there's some much more advanced modules that are in there. Let's take a look at our older version of the software here so I can show you what is coming in case you're not seeing that right now. Basic events, there are a few other events that are in here, including some of our QuickBooks and Xero integrations. In our small and medium-sized business module, this is really where you're able to do a lot of your software as a service type of calculations. Customers, growth and churn, running campaigns where you're sending people to websites, transfer and conversion rates from free to paid to trial to pro, revenue calculations, average order, salesperson and outbound sales in there. The capacity module will have, as I mentioned, employees, resources, projects, utilization, and capacity. And our utility events have some more advanced events in here like constraints and groups and goals and growths alongside some of the ones you're already seeing like modifiers. So just to be clear, this is all going to be getting updated here and you'll be able to use some of these other events. Most of these are pretty straightforward in our version similar to the income and expense events that we've shown you before. I'm going to show you one slightly more specialty event, which is called an account expression event. If I add this to our canvas, this is where you can do some very basic ledger math to be able to create your own custom values. So let's call this a custom KPI here, for example. And maybe we want to take our income and we want to divide it by actually, let's do something different. We want to look at the proportion of revenue that the Vancouver office is generating versus the London office. So here what I would want to do is I would want to be able to target the income from Vancouver, and I would want to be able to divide that by the total income. All right, so here I'm now picking my total income. We can even just do our main income that's here right now. And what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to assign that to a account. So I want to be able to, I'm going to create a KPI account here. I'm going to go into my KPIs. We have some pre-existing ones, but this is a custom KPI. So I'm going to create a KPI here called Vancouver Rev percentage. By default, it's making this a dollar value. Instead, I would like this to be a percentage. I want to be able to display that after the values, and I want to have a space in between there too. So I'm going to be able to do a calculation like that. And I'm going to create an account here. Now, technically, we need to add a multiplier of 100 to this to actually make it a value. So you can see it's not going to be displayed exactly the way we want it to. But I've created this Vancouver revenue percentage calculation here right now. I'm going to fill and add this. So now we have that in this particular calculation. And here I am going to connect those back together so that calculation is happening in both of those threads. I'm going to do an update calculation here now. And now I'm going to go to my other ledgers. I'm going to go to my KPIs. And I have this new Vancouver percentage value that's here. Again, as a reminder, it's not going to be quite the value that we want it to be here. It's going to be a 0.5 as opposed to multiplied by 100. But here I'm now able to take a look at this information and be able to see in both of these scenarios what the difference is with the modifier in those percentages. So an account expression is really, really powerful. You can use it to target any ledger anywhere and use addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division type calculations to be able to generate custom calculations for your model. So what have we done in this scenario? In this scenario, we have added in a decision. I've shown you how a null event can create a non-calculating, non-impact thread. We've added in a modifier. We've shown how you can use a modifier to modify an upstream value, how those modifiers can stack or have dates for calculating. And I've shown you a very basic implementation of the count expression event to take ledger data that's being generated in the rest of your model to create custom calculations and assign those to a custom ledger that you've created on the fly to be able to display.